Hey, what's up guys? It's day 88 today of the Squat Everyday program. Like usual, I hit a top set of 170 today. And yeah, did a whole bunch of grease in the groove, I guess. Grease in the groove reps afterwards. I did 10 sets of threes at 73% of the top set of 170, which works out to be 125 kilo. While I was doing it, I kind of had this thought, like I always have, when I do this type of work, is that it's almost not fun to train this way, because we all train to lift heavy weights, to go balls to the wall. Most of us that go to the gym often, that train often, we have that drive, we have that competitive spirit. We want to feel like we're working hard. The irony of the whole thing is that that type of training doesn't get you results. It's really interesting. When I was younger, I used to think hard work pays off, and the guys at the top level have just worked harder. But that's not the case. It's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my lifting career, and actually my sporting career, that the hardest worker isn't necessarily the best player. You need to have smarts, you need to have technique, understanding of the training process, of the training science. You can't just come into the gym, smash it, and expect big results. I know myself, I have had periods where I have really good training, as in I'm kind of like following my philosophy, following the right path, and then I hit a top set, things are going well, and then I just kind of get out of that training mindset and just want to keep push for the following week or so, and then I start to regress, start to perform worse. So then it takes me a little while to understand why that's happening, and then I realize that I'm not training, I've been working out this certain period. And that's the topic of this video. I'm here to tell you guys that there's a difference between training and working out, and the sooner you realize that, the better you're going to be. It's taken me quite a while to understand that. Pavel Tsatsouline, I've raved on about him in the past, but he's the first guy that I heard say training and working out is not the same. Training is essentially a planned process where you basically are lifting in a state of practice, and you guys will hear that term if you look into Pavel Tsatsouline's work. You need to think of training as practicing. Sure, there are periods in training where you push harder and you kind of approach that failure, but those are very rare moments. Most of the time when you're training, you are staying clear of that failure. You're staying clear of that complete exhaustion. You're training towards a stimulus to the point where your body gets a stimulus, and then you're backing off and you're hitting it again. Especially if you are a natural athlete, going to failure is very, very detrimental to you because it takes such a long time to recover from it. If you don't believe me, stress encompasses both physical, mental, emotional, the lot of it. So if you go under the squat bar and you squat your maximum, and then you put a bit more weight, and then you get stuck halfway up and you have to ditch, that is an extraordinary amount of stress on your organism to get over. And so what will happen for the following day, 2-3 week, your training will have to kind of reflect that stress, meaning that you will have to kind of deload. If you continue pushing, your body will force you to deload, and then you're going to kind of go back below a level where you could have been if you thought about it and deloaded at the right time. So stress comes in many forms. Physical, like I said to you, the maximum squat is one. If your girlfriend leaves you right now and you spend the next 24 hours crying, 48 hours crying, do you think you're going to come back in 2 days time and hit your 1 rep max for a crazy thing? You won't, because your organism is fatigued, the adrenal glands are fatigued. The adrenal glands also are come into play with smelling salts. For some of you guys, you've used smelling salts, before a lift. You just jack that shit up, fires your whole nervous system up and you lift. What people don't understand is that that's actually a stimulant, right? It completely dumps your adrenaline into the blood work, and you can perform better because you are, adrenaline up. The downside to that is that for every up, there's a down. So you hit that rep. That's the smelling salts have given you this much above your normal level. It's also going to give you that much below your level for recovery. so it's going to take that much longer to recover. So all this stuff is what I want to talk about today. Stress is basically the enemy of training per se. We all need stress. Without stress, there's no adaptation, there's no progress. But when I'm saying stress, I'm talking about the negative stress, like the unwanted stress in training. So, we all know that there is a optimal amount of volume work that we need to do to progress. And for all of us, that's different, right? And this is where the trick is. This is where coaching comes really in handy. Working out how much work you need to do to get a stimulus, and then getting the hell out of the gym and coming back and hitting that, in that little threshold. If you come too high, you're going to have to recover for longer. If you go too low, you've done fuck all, basically. You're just wasting your time. So that's what training is. Training is finding that perfect threshold for stimulus and hitting that over and over again. The people that are really smart are always in there. People like me in the past who have kind of been really thirsty, really hungry for gains, we push really, really hard, we exceed that threshold, and then we're freaking recovering for a lot longer than we have to. And then for me, in my case, if I come back tomorrow and squat again, my squatting is shit, and then I'm hard-headed, I try to push to the same level, and then I completely screw up the recovery, and then then I get an injury, then I get a painful thingy in the hip, that I always seem to have when I'm pushing squats. So that is the difference between training and working out. Working out is basically just working out, right? You just, you go to your session and you just basically smash yourself. Pavel Tsatsouline says, if you want to work out, just go run up a hill, full sprint, run up the hill. Do that 50 times and you're going to be worked out. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be huffing and puffing and breathing and all of that. In that space of working out comes metabolic conditioning. I know CrossFit is a big thing about metabolic conditioning. And there's definitely a part for that. But even within the metabolic conditioning world, like there is certain things you have to watch for. You can't be hitting a maximum heart rate every single workout and expecting to progress. There needs to be a certain monitoring of the parameters. A lot of the guys talk about specific thresholds of a heart rate to determine how hard you're working. So training even in the metabolic world is a thing. Periodization, planning, microcycles, macrocycles that don't just exist in the strength world. You think about long distance runners, some of these endurance events. There's periodization there as well, and I'm pretty sure some of these guys are not running competition, type of events every single day. You just burn out, right? So I just want to highlight that to you guys. Some of you are, just getting into the game. I guess some of you are below my level, and I think, it's one of the most important things to learn as a young lifter, as a rookie lifter, amateur lifter, is that your perception of how you worked out in the gym might not be exactly following up with results. So if you feel exhausted at a particular session, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get really, really good results. It sucks that it's that way because I really have a good work ethic. I could smash myself every single day, and I kind of pride myself on being that hard-headed, when I'm training. But what I've realized in my years of training is that that's not the most smartest way to train. Results are not going to come your way. You're going to plateau. That's a word that people describe staleness, basically, no progress. You just keep hitting that rev limiter and progressing. If you will, in the car world, you're just spinning your tires. You've accelerated too hard, and you're spinning your tires. You're not getting full momentum. So that's another analogy that I like to use. You need to apply enough acceleration to the pedal for traction so you can go. It's a race, right? You don't want to be smoking it up at the start line. So the difference between training and working out, there's definitely one. Work on it. Understand where you need to be in your training to get progress. You don't want to be doing fuck all every single day and not doing enough stimulus, but you also do not want to be spilling over and exhausting yourself. For me today, I worked with 70% of my training max today, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, this is so easy, like I'm just going through the groove. But what I did realize as well is that my technique is second to none. Like, it's perfect. Every rep is perfect. Whereas if I did 10 sets of 3 at 90%, you know, some of those later sets are not going to be good. Like you're going to be getting out of position, you're going to try to compensate, you're going to try to use your back, you're going to just, you know, look all whack. Whereas with, you know, 70% weight, you can ensure that every single rep that you do is perfect. And so that's what training is. I know Pavel Tsatsouline, you know, on Joe Rogan's podcast a few months ago, he talked about, you know, some research studies from the Eastern Bloc, and they talked about this one particular study. They looked at many different athletes. You know, we're talking like thousands of athletes, and he basically said that in that study, most of the work was done around 65% to 70% of their 1 rep max. Most of the work was in that period, in that sort of weight intensity. So it goes to show you, you know, like, you know, it's not sexy. It's not sexy to lift, you know, 70% weight, but that's kind of what's necessary for the biology to kind of to get enough stimulus and also not to get completely exhausted. You can't get smashed every single day, expect a beautiful recovery. Now, if you are not a natural athlete, if you're enhanced, I don't have any experience with that, but I know that these drugs are restoratives, and that's basically their classification. So you're basically able to restore or recover quicker than a natural athlete. Then maybe you can, you know, push that threshold up a little bit higher towards your maximum. But I know for a natural athlete, over the years, it's really hard when you're an amateur, when you're a rookie, and you don't really know what you're dealing with. But you know, I can't sleep when I'm exhausted. I just feel tired. I'm moody. I don't really have that much motivation. So all of these things kind of come up when you're pushing the accelerator too hard. But when you're just in the right spot, you're feeling fresh all the time. You're feeling enthused. You're feeling, you know, up and about kind of thing. It's a really interesting thing. So there are certain symptoms that you can look for, but those symptoms takes years of experience for you to recognize those symptoms. Feeling absolutely exhausted and sore every single day is definitely not a good idea for training. I know the bodybuilding world has completely skewed our understanding of what the right amount of volume is or what the right amount of work is. You know, because, you know, they train once a week. The bro split is notorious for that. You know, you absolutely kill one muscle group. You do 60 million reps on one muscle group. You're dead for the whole week for that muscle group, and then you come back. 7 days of recovery is way too freaking long, man. Imagine if, you know, a basketball or a soccer player kicked the ball once a week. Had like 1 5-6 hour session once a week where they just went crazy with training, and they didn't kick the ball for 6 weeks for 6 days. It's just not intuitively sound, right? Like it doesn't seem correct for you to train one movement or your sport to train it once a week. That doesn't seem like it's a good thing, especially for sports that are skill oriented. And I know a lot of you guys are going to think, oh, deadlift, squat, you know, bench press, there's not a lot of skill involved. You'd be surprised. The squat is actually a very technical lift. So is the deadlift. It's not just brute strength, just, you know, rip and you know, dip and grip and rip. It's not just like that. Like there's a lot of technique, and especially if you're at a lower body weight, you know, you need to maximize, I guess, your potential. And skill is definitely one of those, you know, things you gotta perfect. Now there's also brute strength, but even those brutes out there, if they perfected their skill, they'll be better, right? So it's a bit of a rant, but training is definitely different. Working out, understand that. Don't take my word for it. Look at Pavel Tsatsouline. Look at basically any you know, reputable coach out there in the strength world. Not just the strength world. Look at anyone really. They'll talk about, you know, leaving some in the tank each session, and it's not just about smashing. There's a difference also between testing and training. So just you know, some food for thought. The whole time I was doing the workout today, I thought to myself, wow, like, you know, even myself who understands the difference, I sometimes get out of it. Like I sometimes come into the shed and I want to have fun, and fun for me is pushing hard. But unfortunately, it's just not the case. You know, if you want results, you have to be, you kind of have to be disciplined. I just had a thought about the fighting world, MMA. you know, you can't just be angry and rush at your opponent and try and swing and kill him. You need to be disciplined. You need to understand your game plan. You need to kind of approach with smart. You need to be cool, calm, collected. Same as, you know, training with a barbell. You can't just go in, you know, swinging the baseball bat around in place. You can't just be loading the bar up to 1 rep maximum and expecting a result. So anyway, end of the rant. Understand this. There's a difference between training and working out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys.